Hi everyone, it's McNeil. Thanks for checking out my YouTube channel. This is part 2, I guess, for our yoga for arthritis, but specifically for those of you who have arthritis in the back. In the previous video, we talked about how if we have a fused spine, even if we don't, but especially if we do, we want to make sure that we keep our shoulders and our hips mobile. So I focused on the shoulders, did a little bit for the back, for those of you who don't have fused spines yet and still have that mobility, okay? And I mentioned that there's a seated cat pose that mimics the version that most of you will probably know if you've done some yoga before, which is the version on the floor, so on your hands and knees. Now, the seated version is better if you have arthritis in the knees, because this simply can ask too much, right? Of having to kneel and the pressure on the joints can be sometimes too much. So if this doesn't work, go back to the other video and do the seated cat pose spinal release, okay? So you just need a little bit of floor space, and you need to come to hands and knees, and you want to make sure that your knees are under your hips, they're not together, they're hip width apart, and that your wrists are under the shoulders, okay? So you start in neutral spine, and then we inhale, we look up, we lift the chest, and maybe we gently lift the tailbone. And then as we exhale, we round through the mid-back and upper back, release the head, and slowly drop the legs down. Inhaling, coming up. Ironically, here's my cat coming to help in cat pose. Exhale, rounding down. One more time. Inhale, coming forward. And exhale, rounding, pressing up through the mid and upper back. Return to neutral. So you can repeat that for 8 breaths. Feels really nice. Even if you don't have arthritis in the knees or pain in the knees, you might want to do this pose on a nice shag rug, or you can do it on a folded blanket so that there's more support under your knees, or even a folded mat. You don't want to give yourself too much height, but you definitely want to make sure that there's cushioning there, okay? So you don't put too much pressure in those joints. Now, if your wrists are the issue, and you can't quite do that weight bearing that's required in a cat pose, then go back to the seated version. If it's just a little bit of mild discomfort, you don't actually have arthritis in your wrists, it's just simply because you're not used to flexing at the wrists in this way, then you can put some height, again folding the mat up under the palms, okay, to take the edge off the wrists. So that's it. Nothing too crazy about cat pose, nothing too specific. You just want to make sure you breathe. You emphasize moving through the mid and upper back, not so much the low back. And especially if you have arthritis in the spine, you want to maintain that mobility. So it's a very gentle way to do that. Fused spines, I'll repeat, focus on keeping mobility in the shoulders and the hips, which we'll cover in another video, okay? Now after cat pose, it's good to simply stretch out, we'll say, the spine. Come into more of a neutral position in like a child's pose or a modified child's pose. That again can be done on the floor. So you need a little bit of space again. Still support under the knees can help with a blanket or folded mat, and also under the shins and the ankles. You can do 2 versions, legs together, knees together, or you can do knees in a small V, just slightly wider than the hips. Okay, so this version lets you release down to the floor a little bit further, so the belly comes forward or down, and the head can be supported by the floor, more blankets, or even a block under the head. Okay, and then we simply rest here and stretch out the back. Child's pose, classic child's pose, balasana, knees together, the belly is supported by the thighs, and we stretch forward. Again, using support or no support under the head, all right? Those poses you can stay again for another 8 breath holds. Then you can do some variations. So if we start from center, we can walk our hands over, we'll say that's 12 o'clock, walk our hands over to 11. Okay, then come back to center, and walk our hands over to 1 o'clock. So what that's going to allow, you come back to center, excuse me. So what that's going to allow is for a nice release and stretch along the side of the body, outer or armpit, really, shoulder and arm. Okay, so it feels really quite nice. If kneeling isn't an option for you, but you still want to get the benefit of a child's pose, then you can do it standing. If you imagine me standing, having a surface where you reach forward, bringing the head down gently, okay? Going as wide with the hands as you need, so there's no pinching or pain in the shoulders and arms, okay? So, try cat pose, go through child's pose to help keep the mobility in your spine, manage your pain, and just make you feel a little bit better, okay? And if you'd like to find out more about how yoga can help you manage your pain and your arthritis symptoms, check out my newsletter at mcneilyoga.ca.